Thanks, Deputy Speaker. Well, what a contrast between the way those opposite, the culture of those opposite, really, that till now there's been only men lecturing to the women on this side about how, I said until now, about how little we must know about our regions. That'd be the regions that we live in, the regions that we've spent our lives in, that we've raised our kids in and are still raising our kids in. And this absolute arrogance that only for some reason someone who's part of a national party or a Liberal national party, or for goodness knows what reason the Liberals would have any idea or have a better idea than us. Now, can we just accept that every region is different? And I'm going to talk about how my region is different, but I know my region. I know what we miss out on. I know what this government is failing to deliver. And one of the things it's failing to deliver is respect for the women who represent these regions. My region is one that sits on the edge of Sydney. We can be confused sometimes as a city electorate. We can be confused sometimes as a remote electorate. And most of the time we sit in this area of being peri-urban. We are the key producer in New South Wales of perishable vegetables. The floods gave that a real hit, and you only need to go to Flemington markets to see how the produce availability has been affected by that. We're the key producer of turf in the country. We're an area that has orchards, we have beef, we have not much dairy, but we still do have a bit of dairy. Unfortunately, while some areas are worrying about different threats to agriculture, mine is worrying about encroachment from creeping houses that are taking over rich land. And that's a failure of government policy, a failure to protect areas that have been in our history absolutely vital. It's the Hawkesbury that kept the settlement of Sydney alive when the colonialists were here. When they first started and they couldn't grow stuff, the Hawkesbury could grow it. So we are steeped in agricultural history. And that doesn't mean that the threats are going to... I mean, the threats are horrific, I have to say. The dairies that we've lost to housing, people will look back and ask, how could a country have given up such a rich source of agricultural production land? So the things that have struck us in the last 18 months or so, yes, there was the drought, and areas on the edge of Sydney don't always get noticed as being drought affected, but that's really hurt. It's hurt our wine growing parts. It's hurt all our anyone with pasture. It's hurt. And then, of course, we had bushfires, and the bushfires wiped out apple orchards. They wiped out beautiful parts of the country, orchards that have never had bushfires before. And that tells you something about how every region is being affected in different ways by the changes in the climate, to see things that we've never seen before. And then we had our first flood. Then we had COVID. Then we had the biggest flood that the Hawkesbury River's experienced in about 30 years. A flood that wiped out vegetable crops, wiped out turf, left silt everywhere, ate into the riverbank. And here's where this government's real failure is. It is great at announcing support for bushfires and announcing support for floods, but it never lands on the ground. I can count on one hand the support that my orchards have had. And there's been a couple of really good bits and pieces, but that's all it is. And in terms of flood, there are great big horseshoe-shaped holes in the side of the Hawkesbury River, and the state and federal government have not worked out what arrangements are going to be in place for stabilisation, let alone any kind of remediation of those. And that affects every producer in my region. So don't sit across there and then tell us that we don't know our regions. The places that we live, the places that we spend every minute in once we escape Canberra, the places where people tell us what they need, and the places where we listen to the people that we represent.
Hear.